Our first speaker, a good friend of mine, is a digital analyst, business strategist and futurist who creates media strategies and frameworks that build bridges between companies, customers, employees and key stakeholders around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first international speaker here today, all the way from California, Mr. Brian Solis.
Good morning. Good morning. Before we kick off, I hail from Silicon Valley, and there is a great assumption that we are known for amazing innovation and technology. That's partly true. But what I want to share with you today is what I believe is the heart and soul, the very essence of Geelong in its transformation to Silicon Bay. Technology is an enabler. Technology happens. Technology will always be innovative as long as it's useful. But we can't lose sight of the fact that innovation starts with purpose. It starts with something that drives you, drives an entrepreneur, drives an idea, and then it's the ability to bring that idea to life that makes innovation possible. So that means that true innovation, and what I'm going to speak about this morning, true innovation is human. It's you, it's me, it's something that you feel, and it's something that's burning inside of you that you want to do, and we learn and we do the things that make it possible. Innovation is you and me. Innovation starts with us, and nothing says innovation like a PowerPoint deck. So, Monty and Scoble and I were off to the airport yesterday in New South Wales. We saw a billboard sponsored by the New South Wales taxi company that said that ride sharing is no safer than hitchhiking. And while debatable, I'm pretty sure that there have been their fair share of taxi drivers who have committed crimes. But we tend to focus on the few Uber drivers as a way of sort of validating our lack of innovation or our desire to change. And that billboard, again, debatable, I'm sure, but that billboard is a physical manifestation of a group's inability to endorse progress. Fights it. And that is perspective, that is human, and that is what faces all of us in however we're going to progress. What we are competing for is not innovation. You are not trying to be innovative. What you are trying to do is be relevant. Innovation is just a function of relevance. You are trying to build and create things that not just create jobs and new wealth and revenue, but the ability to matter in a new era. So whether you like Uber or not, whether you believe that Uber drivers are criminals or not, it's going to happen. And it's the choice that you make right now in progress that defines your legacy. You fight it or you shape it. And I choose to shape. So when we look at business, right, there's friction everywhere. We can't even think about new startups and possible innovation until we fix a lot of the broken things that exist within companies, within finance, within healthcare. The key thing is that in order to be truly innovative, we actually have to be able to be innovative with ourselves first. This is a comic strip that basically shows that one of the greatest challenges to any form of innovation is cognitive bias, right? The way the world is evolving, and then the way that you actually see the world through your own eyes, tends to filter your perception of what is innovative and what's good in terms of innovation. So, for example, what this comic strip is showing is that the New South Wales billboard, for example, if you think that Ubers are criminals, you're going to go to Google and you're going to search something, and the first link you find is probably going to be related to that, and thus you're validated. Instead of looking at the possibilities and choosing your role within this evolution. I call this digital Darwinism, right? Technology and society whether it's here, whether it's in Silicon Valley, whether it's in Detroit, Austin, wherever it is, technology and society evolve. It is your choice of where you play a role in it. But the thing about that, and the reason why I say technology and society evolve, is because things like behaviors and expectations and preferences and value systems, like our very core of humanity, these things are starting to change. So some of us grew up with a core set of values that were handed down to us from our parents and their parents. And at the same time, technology is reshaping humanity, and those core values have shifted. That's where innovation begins, right? For those in the room who may use Tinder, it's not a dating app, right? It's swipe right for a hookup. And it's totally cool because it makes life a whole lot easier for some people. But on the other side of the spectrum, it's completely judged as a hookup app. Oh, swiping right. Where did dating and values go? Well, the more we talk like that, the more we sound like our parents. In my day, blah, 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 blah. And that results in the loss of relevance. You now start to act and sound old. And that's not innovation. Kodak was once one of the most beautiful brands in the world. The Kodak moment meant something. It was nostalgia, it was memories. It gives you goosebumps just thinking about those Kodak moments. And now the Kodak moment means that moment when you lose sight of how to be relevant in today's society. And Kodak and many other brands who fall to digital Darwinism stopped competing for relevance because they based all of their decisions on legacy foundations, how they saw the world, the way that their stakeholders and shareholders believed that value was to be met, the metrics of which they used to measure their progress. And all along, everything that they knew, all the decisions that they made based on what they knew, failed them. And it happens over and over. It's a textbook case now. This is the moment when Blockbuster was overtaken by Netflix. And every company that has failed or is failing has a disruption moment on its horizon. For some of us, it's already happened. For others, it's about to happen. But there is a disruption event for every single company. And when you look at it in hindsight, it's very clear. Whoops. But it's what you do on this side, the decisions you make, the expertise you attract, the way we unlearn what we know to learn what's new, to be relevant for the future, happens right here. I don't know if you know the story of Netflix, but it was started by Reed Hastings because he was charged a $40 late fee for Apollo 13 by Blockbuster. Could you imagine that moment, the clerk in the store ringing that $40 late fee up, not realizing that that one transaction sealed the fate of this company? Whoops. So again, that idea of being so upset about a $40 late fee changed how we consume video forever. It was something driven by purpose, passion. That's innovation. Then they just built the technology and the infrastructure to support it. And that's it. That's really where innovation begins. It's a shift in perspective. It's not just riding on the laurels of what we know and the confidence of who we are today. It's about our aspirations of who we can become, what we can learn. Because perspective, when you see it square on, it's hilarious. It's like this. It's that moment where some of us are going to see this picture and say, that's right, everyone. Put your phones down. Enjoy the moment. On the contrary, I made a joke when I posted this picture on Twitter. Can you believe this woman depriving all of her Facebook friends of this moment? But what we see is this coalescence of perspective. Some see this as the way the world is. That's just how we experience life. We share the moments with the people who are most important to us. That phone is something that allows us to basically becomes a window to a new world that brings us together, brings people from all over the world together in a moment. That's amazing. Yet some judge it as our inability to be present. And that judgment is the cognitive bias that prevents true innovation. You might invest in technology, you might iterate, but that's not good enough. Iteration is not good enough. Evolution and innovation and disruption are outpacing iteration. And this image shows us where we could be in terms of possibilities. And that's what relevance is about. The heart of who you are and the very soul of what you do, you either compete for relevance or you don't. It is an intentional decision. And that's the thing, that's the magic about innovation, is that relevance is actually not what you think it is. It is your ability to see what is important to someone else that's different than you and how they're affected by technology and their value systems that allow you to then be inspired by something new and different. Life is not going backwards. On one side, you can walk safely without cell phones. On the other side of the sidewalk, feel free, but walk at your own risk. And that is because this is natural now, right? I mean, at some point, I think we're going to evolve Darwinian sort of shoulders that allow us to sort of move our eyeballs up. But it's just natural, right? This is a reflection of society. And again, some of us say, this is ridiculous. This is what's wrong with the world. Put your phones down. You cannot, because it's now an appendage. It's now part of my body. So all we can do is understand it and appreciate it and get in front of it, not react to it, but get in front of it. Because right now what we're doing, a lot of companies, a lot of governments, a lot of just bodies around the world, not just in Australia, everywhere I go, they look at all of this innovation. They look at the Internet of Things. They look at social media. They look at mobile. They look at some amazing technologies that are on the horizon, and they look at it and they say, all right, how are we going to use this in our work? How are we going to use this to change the world? And that is exactly the moment when you start to fail. Because technology just helps you do something differently than you did before. Maybe better, maybe faster. But it's when you take a step back and you look at this technology, but you also look at society and expectations and aspirations outside of your own being to see then what's possible with technology, or to see what's not possible with technology and thus create something new. And that's true innovation. Because on the other side of that screen, on the other side of that app, on the other side of everything is a human being. And it's almost absurd in a way that most companies and governments and businesses over the years have used technology to get further away from people. We use it as a way of scaling efficiencies and processes and systems so that we can handle more people, more things, faster, cheaper, but not better. This is, again, where Silicon Valley and any innovation center around the world find their momentum, find their steps, because it's always human. Whatever the idea is, whatever the goal is something based on what someone cannot do today or how someone does it in a way that's not the best. So the future of business is something that's actually created and co-created. It's not something that we just sort of bring about because of tradition. Don't get me wrong, tradition is important and it's a staple in our lives. But I assure you that no successful entrepreneur has said, but this is the way it's always been done. Why change? So with that regard, the co-creation of this is an idea that's been shaped by the ideas and frustrations and opportunities of others. I think that is beautiful. This is such a beautiful moment, such a beautiful opportunity if we just open our minds to new possibilities that, yes, feel uncertain and unsafe because we're making those decisions from a new center that is outside of our comfort zones. But that's what it takes. The idea of community, the idea of collective wisdom, the idea of seeing things from the perspective of others and adding it to your own is really where we can begin. And that means we need to listen and look and observe more than we do. Right? We tend to do and talk and react without actually just being inspired. And so somewhere along the way, as a digital analyst and as a futurist, my real work, the work that really matters to me, happened about 10 or 11 years ago when I became a digital anthropologist. And studying technology's effect on society and the new norms and cultures that were emerging as a result changed my entire life, changed my entire perspective, made me see the world differently, and I realized that I had been looking at the world through my own filter of things of the way that I knew it, the way that I judged it, the way that I valued things. That wasn't good enough. So, in honor of the Ford plant closing in March, decided to include something with Henry Ford. It's a great irony, though, in that looking at the perspective of others is actually a gift. Perspective is a gift. Empathy is a gift. But this is a quote, as an analyst, as a business strategist, I hear over and over and over again from the ignorance of executives everywhere. Customers and people don't always know what they want, so we're just going to give it to them. Because they'll always quote Henry Ford. If I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. I heard that so many times in my life that I decided to look it up and do some research. Did Henry Ford ever really say that? No physical evidence in the world, or even in the Henry Ford Museum, of him ever saying that. It became a business myth. I think that some people just sort of invented as a way of preventing change. Oh, sounds good. Let's just keep using that. By the way, when you start questioning everything, which is what innovation is about, you now start to unlock a whole world that unravels like a thread of everything that you thought you knew wasn't actually true in the first place. Like Gandhi's "be the change you want to see in the world" quote. Along with that, I just started unraveling all kinds of things that we say and believe in. Because when you question everything, you learn that what Henry Ford actually said was actually what innovation is all about. The secret to success is to get the point of view or the perspective of someone else and let that guide you based on what you're trying to do or what you believe in. Let that fuel your purpose. That's a completely different quote, but now it means something. What you're looking at here is a beautiful art series that photoshops out the phones from every picture so that you can see what it really looks like. We now live in a world where innovation is based on what I call the ecosystem. So we are all, in our own way, shape, or form, lovingly said, of course, becoming accidental narcissists. Right? That phone is your window to your world, and people all around you react to the things that you do and share, and you do the same with your friends. You want the car to take you somewhere? Well, there's an app for that. You want to rent someone's home? There's an app for that. You want a pizza? There's an app for that. There's an app for everything, and it's teaching us that we are the center of our own universe. So the idea of innovation isn't just about great ideas. It's about great ideas in a society that's actually on escape velocity. How we see this picture is dependent on how we move forward. Or this picture. Right? For the parents in the room, I'm sure you're thinking, those are my kids. This is I tell them to put the phone down. But yet, when you realize that this, to them, that this is the best party ever, right? It is to them. That they're probably telling each other that. In that moment. This is the best party ever. I know. Emoji, emoji, emoji. So when we think about the word relevance, right, innovation happens right here in that screen and in that moment. How do you matter? How do you become part of someone's life? I actually talk to executives who have said, we do not like who our customers are becoming. We don't actually want to work with them. Really? That sounds like you should just walk out the door right now. Maybe give the company to someone who cares. Because if you don't care, if you don't see and appreciate the differences and the nuances, regardless of your own beliefs, you're never going to be able to compete for relevance. That's the hard part. That's what sucks or what's beautiful about this moment. Innovation is something you're going to have to stomach, of being different than everything you know. And that can be cool and it can not be cool, right? But the whole idea of just looking at society and be able to appreciate it for its nuances, it's not just a concept of, for those in the room who use Tinder and you know what swipe right means, it's not just about that app. It's about what that app does to your brain, right? You are literally browsing through human beings with the swipe in the hopes that you're going to meet someone. And that starts to teach you that you can have anything you want at the swipe of a finger. In this case, if someone else swipes back on you. But the point is that you're starting to learn, or if you're not, people around you are starting to learn that the world literally revolves around them in the moment. And that changes expectations. That changes everything. And that's where we start. When we leave here, we have to be able to look like, wow, society is crazy, but it can also be crazy amazing if I'm part of it, right? Because some stats are pretty amazing, right? We keep reprogramming our brain every time you look at your phone. You look at your phone 1,500 times a week. Somebody did the math. It's about 177 minutes per day. It's a lot of time, right? And every one of those minutes changes what you expect to happen in the moment. So when you go and deal with a company or a government and they do not operate this way, you become impatient, you become frustrated, you become absolutely driven to do something differently. Whether you find another company, whether you move, whatever it is you're going to do, because you now expect the world to work like Tinder or like Uber. And guess what? It is starting to work that way. It's inevitable, but there's a beauty in this idea of what we all know of as benevolence. It's just sort of taking a breath and realizing that in all of this crazy evolution and crazy innovation, that we have something to learn. That, yeah, it's sort of hard because we got caught up in that generation where you didn't just follow the steps of your predecessors, where the harder you worked, the more you earned, the more you saved, the better the life, right? We're that generation. We're in that time where we have to deal with stuff like, wow, what do we do tomorrow? That college education, that university education, do I have to go back to school and learn how to code? Do I have to learn something new? Yeah, I didn't ask for this. I kind of thought I was going to go through life like everybody else, but now I even have to figure out, how do I be relevant for the future? I write books. What's that going to do? But it's asking those questions and doing something about it that brings about true innovation. And innovation is something that starts right here with me. Innovation is something that starts right with you tomorrow. What are you going to do differently? That's the beauty of this. And benevolence begets reciprocity. Reciprocity is one of the most magical things in the world. if you feel like someone's trying to be relevant to you because they get you, you appreciate it. And in return, you show a sign of thanks, whether that's the form of a relationship, business, commerce, voting, whatever it is. Reciprocity, it's very human, it's lovely, but it's also a transaction. And we have to be able to see the world and design it accordingly. Because the way we see the world and the way we design for the world is not how people are going through the world. And unless we walk in their shoes, unless we become the very people we're trying to reach, we're going to keep missing the mark. Questioning everything happens everywhere. Anything. For example, how many of you use a Microsoft Office product, right? You click that disk to save your work all the time. And some of you in the room have actually seen a floppy disk. So it makes sense that you're clicking that to save, right? But there's a whole other generation that actually thinks that's a save icon. They have no clue what a floppy disk is, right? The simplest things of what we do in life, innovation can happen anywhere. The save icon is a good place to start. Hey kid, you ever seen one of these before? Oh, you 3D printed the save icon. Right there. What does this image tell us about what we can do when we question everything? Right? This is an example of iteration, right? And how iteration doesn't work at some point. When you turn on the television, I think Tim Cook just said this, the CEO of Apple last week. When you turn on the television, it's like going back in time, right? This is the result of assumptions being made and no questions ever really being asked about how do you be relevant in this day. I mean, look at this screen. This screen is gorgeous, right? This screen is gorgeous. The screens around us, these Samsung screens are gorgeous. I bet you every single one of them comes with this, right? It's absurd. It's so absurd that I decided, let's study the history of remote controls to figure out what went wrong and how we can use this as a metaphor for innovating, leaving the pivot sign. Well, it turns out that since the 1950s, they have sucked more and more with every new bit of technology that was introduced. Do you know that the average number of buttons on a remote control is 70? And the best we got were color coding and backlit keys. That's not innovation. That's chaos. In fact, the first app, right, given an opportunity to break free from this and be innovative, the first app was a television remote with buttons. It wasn't until Apple, just this week now starting to ship the new Apple TV, decided to reimagine the television remote. The new Apple TV remote has a trackpad. That makes more sense. It also has a mic for Siri so that you can intelligently control your watching experience. It took a company that made computers and iPods and iPhones to figure out the remote. And that's when it hit me. Part of the problem with innovation is because we look at society and judge it because it's different than us. But the other part of it is because we keep looking at ourselves, our companies, whatever we do for a living, as a benchmark against the people we compete against. All the television companies looked at all the other television companies for remote controls. And they tried to be better than the other one. Oh, this one's much more ergonomic. It's contoured. Thanks. But when you look outside of your industry, you now start to see beautiful possibilities. Starbucks, for example, whether you like their coffee or not, they look at consumer technology companies as their competitors, which is why their entire infrastructure of digital and physical has been so brilliant. Because they're trying to compete against those companies, not other coffee companies. This is an app called Text and Walk that would probably make sidewalks safer all around the world. Turns the camera on your phone so you can safely text and walk. It's not the most popular app, though, because it's actually rather difficult to keep your arms up for long periods of time. It's easier to just do this. But I use this app as a metaphor for seeing the world through the lens of someone else, right? Because now we can appreciate, and as Robert, my friend here, will show you later, some of the crazy technology that's coming, the way you're going to be able to experience the world and see the world so radically different that this is just a amuse-bouche, a little appetizer of what's going to happen, what's possible. So now we have to make very smart decisions moving forward about where we're going to have the greatest success. Are we going to iterate? Are we going to innovate? Or are we going to disrupt? And this is what's hard. As optimistic as I am, I'm a hopeless optimist. Disruption, I mean, the truth about it is that it's going to happen to us. It just is. It's happening to industries everywhere. And it's what you do in that moment that tests your character. But true character and true innovation happens before that moment of disruption. And for some of us, hopefully well before, where we actually become the ones disrupting others. And so it comes down to disrupt or be disrupted. It's a reality. It's a harsh reality, and I'm not the one bringing it to the world, but what I am trying to do is share with you that if you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you're on the wrong side of innovation. Leadership is a funny word, because I meet leaders all over the world. And I think we started to confuse the word leader with manager, the boss, the decision maker. I'm not placing my bets on my place in society on those people. Leadership is a word that means that you see something differently and you do something differently. And thus that results in seeing what other people can't or won't and doing what other people can't or won't. And the beauty about leadership is it can come from anywhere. Scoble and I know plenty of billionaires who started their companies as teenagers. They're leaders because they saw and did things differently. So again, if you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you're going to be waiting or doing the things that do not help you innovate or disrupt. That's why innovation is incredibly personal. And it breaks out to 3 different types of steps you can do leaving this conference. You just go about what you did and you can say, I'm full of shit. You can try to keep up with all this technology and you can try to change things, but I promise you that trying to keep up is the new remote control. You compete for the future right now. You try to be relevant right now. And that means that the norms and the behaviors and the expectations of your customers or your stakeholders or your shareholders, that's just one side of it. But this disruption that's happening outside is also happening inside, right? I want you to think about this. Innovation and disruption you're breathing it in right now. And it's settling in for each of us differently. When you go back to work, you're going to work in an environment that feels like the television. It's old, it's outdated, and like the save icon, we have not questioned, why do we work this way if I can go swipe right outside of work? And that is starting to feel, as an employee, horrible. Some of us might not even know it yet. You might be going home a little bit depressed. But it's because you're being asked to work in an environment that does not feel natural anymore. Maybe never did. I mean, cubicles, what was that all about? However, so disruption is happening everywhere, from the inside out and the outside in. And our ability to do something about it, slowly, it's okay. Just digital Darwinism favors those that at least try. But that's where innovation happens, is when you're competing for relevance. Because innovation is an iteration. It's not a better remote. It's something that unlocks entirely new value, changes the direction that you were going in. It changes what it was that you believed was the standard you were trying to hit, changes your aspirations. It is a blank slate. That is what this is about. It's about appreciating everything that you've learned to date in your life, personally and professionally, and now deciding what are you going to do to build upon something that's fresh. It's what Uber did to the taxi industry. It's what Amazon did to bookstores and to retailers everywhere. And yes, starting from scratch is very difficult, but when you allow yourself to at least think about new possibilities, you're able to think about new possibilities, and you break free from the rut of remote controls. Innovation is deeply personal. Innovation begins with you. That's so amazing. That yes, we didn't ask to have to relearn everything and compete for the future, but it's also a tremendous opportunity for you to define what the future looks like. It is unwritten. It is happening in every moment. And the gap between assumption and aspiration is basically separated by your vision for what's possible. That's why it's a blank slate. Everyone in this room is now special. We were all special before, but now you're going to have an impact on how the future unfolds. Companies everywhere are freaking out. They're opening up innovation centers in Silicon Valley and around the world as a way of trying to compete against startups. The number 2 reasons to gain access to the latest technologies, but the number 2 reason was understand people better. Innovation as being so personal then means it's not just about being selfish and saying, do you know me? It's also asking the question of, do I know you? And can I appreciate you and how you're different? All of this crazy technology, all of the selfies, all of the things that we laugh at are actually making us more human in its own interesting way. And more so, it's allowing us to see people differently. It's allowing us to get to know them. You can actually use all of this technology if you really start to ask the right questions to know people. And what you realize is that innovation, because it's so personal, because so few of us have the answers, we stand together, we form a community of getting answers together and learning together and building together. That means that the community is bigger than any one of us. We're all in this together. The future's co-created because now doing something together makes belonging matter. That's pride. That's validation. That's inspiration. And what it really comes down to is how we leave here thinking differently about the differences between sympathy and empathy. Because we keep making decisions based on sympathy or assumptions, not empathy. And empathy is actually feeling what someone does and why, and being able to relate to it, and letting that, as Henry Ford said, shape your perception of what to do leaving here. And it comes down to humanities. Steve Jobs once said that Apple lived at the intersection of liberal arts and technology. And what he meant by that was understanding people, understanding the context of how they're changing and what they're trying to do and why, and then making those activities be the things that inspire your innovation, your new technology. But innovation isn't just in technology. It's in processes, it's in perspectives, it's in systems, it's in metrics, it's everything you do. You have the ability to rewrite everything, and you should, because you're essentially writing the future for today's teenagers, whom I'm sure very few of us can relate to. Doesn't make them wrong, but they are the first generation to never know life without the internet. And those narcissistic traits of having things your way, when you want it, in real time and in the moment, become the core of what's possible. So humanities, liberal arts, anthropology, not just data science. Everybody keeps thinking that data science is the answer. It's part of the answer. Humanity shapes the questions of which you use data to get you your answers. It's like storytelling. Helps you see the pillars to build the future are all of the things that are incredibly human. And it needs its architect. Innovation needs architects, experiences. Did you know that The Matrix, Inception, and Tron, all of these movies having to do with new worlds, every one of them had a character called the architect? That's what we're becoming. We're also becoming storytellers. This is Disney, the storyboarding for Snow White, the first animated feature to have the storyboarding process created for it. And I thought that storyboarding was just simply the act of putting these still cells together as a way of sort of seeing what the movie would look like without investing all of the money in animation and saying, nope, that sucks. Let's try again. Storyboarding is actually something far, far, far more meaningful. It is the act of testing the believability and the relevance of your characters and your stories and allowing you to flesh out the qualities of the characters so they come to life. So this is, if you really want to geek out, the magic of Disney. This is how the magic comes to life. And it makes you get to know these characters in really, really amazing ways. And it allows you to put them in a story format where you care. Right? I mean, I'm sure several of you have cried during Disney movies because it's intentional, because it went through the storyboard process. And what you're looking at is Airbnb and their storyboarding process. There was a moment in Airbnb's evolution where it was a brand that was sort of associated with sleeping on people's couches or sex parties or kind of like the same bad PR that Uber's getting. And to hit the next step, right, this multi-billion-dollar valuation, they went back, took a step back, and they brought in a Pixar artist because they had read the story of Snow White, Walt Disney, and the magic of storyboarding. To better understand the Airbnb customer and the Airbnb host. Do you know it takes Pixar 4 years to make a movie? And most of that time is on the front end with this process. That's why when you see a Pixar movie, some of you, hopefully, really relate to it. They're really lovely. And it helped Airbnb figure out all of the things that they were missing to make Airbnb a better community. And they decided to storyboard these scenarios that were very likely before, during, and after a booking for both the host and the guest. They learned a lot. It really changed the future of the company. That's why they reinvented everything. Their logo, their branding, their messaging, their whole purpose. They created a conference for their hosts to bring these experiences to life, to help them understand what the storyboard means and make it personal, right? Not just about making money by subletting your place every night, but by making it part of an experience that brings people together in the Airbnb community. It stood for something. It had purpose. This was innovation. Simply going through a storyboarding process with pen and paper helped them change their future. And when you start to see these futures, when you start to understand how people go through life and you let that inspire your storyboard, you can architect things that are truly amazing. This is Amazon Echo. And these are 4 of the most common things, by the way, which Scoble will tell you about later. But whether you want to know the weather, whether you want to order whatever it was that you have been ordering simply by talking to Alexa, or you want to ask Alexa to say bad words, which is one of the most popular usages for Echo, it is now unlocking all new possibilities simply because Amazon decided to rethink what's possible. What business are we in? Are we in the shipping business, or are we in the innovation business? This is me asking Siri what the fox says, and it actually knows and sings it back to you. That one, ask Siri what 0 divided by 0 is. That'll be funny. It's very, very mean. However, the point of this is that when you start unlocking these possibilities, you can start to change everything. Now, Siri is helping you control your television. New service just opened up that allows other people to contact customer service for you, because why should you? Why should you endure that stress and pain, take days off your life? What's happening is that people are starting to understand that people matter. This is a service that's coming up that essentially becomes the concierge for life. Technology just allows people to come together to do new things, to cater to accidental narcissism in wonderful ways. So with the few minutes that we have left, architecting the future begins with empathy, right? And empathy is what's going to unlock innovation. It's an intersection of technology, brand, aspiration, achievement, and this is what an experience looks like. This is the Magic Band at Disney. It's one of the most marvelous bits of technology. It's much more sophisticated than a Fitbit. You can open your room, you can pay, it knows who you are, it knows what you do, it knows your favorite rides, it knows your favorite restaurants, it starts to learn, and it helps inform Disney how to be better and more relevant and meaningful to you. Helps Disney introduce new services like, hey, Brian's coming to the restaurant. He's 50 meters away. Let's get ready to greet him at the door. Starts to make things magical because they're trying to make things magical, and they're using all of this sophisticated technology to put a smile on her face. That's what innovation does. Technology is invisible. It's not supposed to be the thing that we're talking about all the time. It's cool, we can geek out about it, but it has to start with purpose. And so when you leave here today, you have one decision to make. You could leave here and do the same old stuff, or you leave here and do something entirely new. As hard as it is, I have had to train and retrain myself to be on this side. I like comfortable things. I like norms. I like the world that I used to know, but at the same time, it's finite. I, too, have to do some crazy new stuff. And for some of those who get a copy of the book from Monty, you'll see how I'm trying to be relevant as well. So look, I'm just going to leave you with these 2 things, and then I hopefully have maybe a minute for a question. When we often think about innovation, we're told to think outside of the box, right? Psychologically, in case you haven't studied this and geek out around it like I have, by telling you to think outside the box, I put you in a new box. And that box is governed by the same rules of the other box. Same norms, same standards, same metrics. There is no box. All the things you knew, all the things you think you know, we're back in school. We are all students once again, and I think that's fantastic. You just have to want to be relevant. You just have to want to care. You just have to want to do things that are better for you in order to be able to do things that are better for everyone. And that's why true innovation starts here. Thank you. Do we have time for questions, Monty?
Thanks very much, Brian. Well, that was just incredible. Innovation, a function of relevance. And I can't believe that Netflix was founded on the back of a $40 late fee. For the Geelong team here, I think I've got a couple of copies of Die Hard from Video Easy Belmont that didn't quite make it back. So I'm in for real strife if I head over that side of the river tonight. Stick around for a couple of questions if you might.
Yes.
There are some roving mics around the room here. So please put your hand up and the mic will come to you. We have a question over to the right. If you could just introduce who you are and...
Thanks, Monty. Thanks, Brian. Nick Stanley, ICT Geelong. Brian, I just wanted to ask you a question. I think disrupt or be disrupted is sort of an element that sits behind a bit of that. There's a lot about the individual being innovative. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how organisations can become more disruptive, in terms of being established and maybe what they might seek to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I study this, right? And there's two forms of which I study this. One is under the aspect of innovation. How are innovative companies able to be innovative? The second research is a result of that research. It turns out that they're able to be innovative because they try to be, and it starts with culture. So they create a culture of innovation. And the reason why I got into culture studies is because you cannot be innovative unless you fix the culture of a company first. And by fixing the culture of a company, it means you have to understand what it is first, and where it's broken, and where it needs to be in order to be innovative. And that means that you have to do some very uncomfortable things. You have to figure out where the politics are. You have to figure out where the egos are. You have to figure out where the people are that really want to do the right thing, the mavericks as we call them. And then you have to empower people to do the right thing. And often in the cases of innovation, they form smaller groups of these teams and give them autonomy to do great stuff. They give them aspiration levels, smaller budgets, but allow them, which these things turn into full-blown innovation centers, but they start as these little innovation teams. But the easy answer is, and I know I could talk about this all day, is culture. You have to start with culture.
Any other questions? Just up to the right side, yes.
My name's Linda Carr. I'm a freelance project manager. Thank you very much. Extremely interesting. My question is in regard to the word relevance. It seems to me you get relevant by understanding what the customer needs, wants, and possibly dreams about. You mentioned that data science is not the only way to do this, and it seems to me in this day and age of technology, big data is probably the only way you can find out what the customer really wants and dreams. Is that not what you think?
No, I do. What I mean by that is, big data is sort of it's a big word. I think it's also a bad word. Big data implies that by having a big data strategy and having data scientists, that you're automatically going to be relevant. But I can tell you that after spending many, many years with big data teams and data scientists, we call it the Moneyball strategy. They're basing a lot of their questions and data sets on cognitive bias. And so you're by default taking data and applying it in ways that aren't going to help compete for relevance in the right way. So instead, the better companies are using data teams and data scientists and balancing it with anthropologists and sociologists and ethnographers as a way of understanding how you put new questions into the data set in order to interpret the data differently. And the author of Moneyball is actually this brilliant man who lives on the middle of data science and humanities. And his gift for being able to translate data into relevance is something that I call small data. You understand the smaller aspects of what it is that you're trying to understand, and then use the data science process, using data as a way of figuring out what you need to do. But the biggest secret of big data is the infrastructure of the organization that does something with that data. And that's where a lot of times it's broken. The teams who get that data don't do anything with it because the teams are disparate and the teams are measured to different standards. There's no real incentive to change at the frontline level. And so the biggest companies that use data successfully actually make it part of their DNA.
Time for one more question, and Brian will be on the panel to close out today, so there'll be an opportunity for further questions if they jump to mind throughout the day. So, any other questions? We have one just down the front here. No.
Yeah, it's a good question. His question was, where do good leaders come from, I believe, and how do you sort of empower them to be able to change sort of the nature of management? And I read an interesting study that says if your children talk back to you, they're more likely to be successful in the future. Yeah. And some of you are saying, oh, no, not my child. We're going to fix that right now. Do you know, I basically went throughout my entire career thinking that I was an asshole. And it was because I just didn't stomach half the things that, why do we have to do it this way? I had this saying that I tried to be innovative, but I got stuck in meetings all day. It's questioning everything. It's that. And we can't confuse that with being an asshole. That's somebody that doesn't sit right. And maybe there's something there that, well, what would you do about it then? And empower that and bring those new ideas to life and celebrate those ideas. Some are going to work, some are going to fail, but this is why culture is a big deal. You have to be able to bring that up. And there's a company called Tata Group out of India that has completely reinvented the idea of management to make managers responsible for bringing out those ideas. If you don't like it, what would you do differently? And being measured on how many ideas they get every week, and then being rewarded by how many of those ideas come to life. So the whole nature of the culture of the company and innovation is now at the core level. You have to have, you better have ideas. And you can either take 5 hours a week to think of new ideas, or you can take 5 hours a week to learn something new, and we're going to reward you that way.
Wonderful. Well, thanks very much, Brian. Now, before you go, we're going to give the book a little bit of a plug, and we've actually got a number of copies to give away today. So you'll have an opportunity at the break, if you haven't already, to put your business card into the Lucky Fish Bowl. And before you depart the stage, I might get you to draw our lucky first winner.
Oh, yeah, it'd be my pleasure.